you believe in the existence of extraterrestrials? Tell me I'm crazy.
Mulder, you're crazy.
I can't give up. Not as long as the truth is out there. I want to believe.
Welcome to this episode of The Good, the Bad and the Odd, the X-Files files. This is episode 2 in this series, and I'd like to again welcome my co-host on this, Becky.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good.
You?
Yeah, not bad at all. So we're covering the next 4 episodes in the series. We covered the first 4 in episode 1. Today we are covering the Jersey Devil. I have to try and remember this now. The Jersey Devil, Shadows, Ghost in the Machine, and Ice. Okay, so number 1 is The Jersey Devil. This was written by Chris Carter and directed by Joe Napolina. I'll start again. Joe Napil. I'm not going to edit this. I'm getting this right. Joe Napolitano. No, Joe Napolitano. There we go. First broadcast in the US on the 8th of October 1993. So quite old now. In this one, Scully happens to mention to Mulder there's been an odd murder on the outskirts of Atlantic City, and this rings a bell with Mulder, and he pulls out a very old case involving an X-file concerning the Jersey Devil, which gives them a kind of the remit to go investigate what's going on. Now, this one was like the second Monster of the Week episode. The first one being Squeeze, and it's. I mean, what did you think of this episode overall?
I enjoyed it. I thought it had some interesting kind of commentary, but I know that it wasn't very well received in terms of the overall series. And
I kind of agree. I kind of enjoyed it, and I thought there were some elements concerning the sort of development of the Mulder and Scully characters that are quite kind of nice. Particularly Scully, actually. It had a pre-credit sequence, and they're really actually these pre-credit sequences they're putting in are pretty good, actually. All of I like it. It's working for me. This one starts with a sort of a family driving through in a car in the dark, driving in the dark, and it's kind of, you can tell it's like it's not contemporary. It's like 40s or 50s kind of thing. They're all singing Bingo. Which is kind of cool, and then they get a flat, and the dad has to go change the flat, and we see quite nastily he gets snatched away by something, and then a sort of a local police force hunt down whatever it is and trap it in a sort of underground lair, and then it moves towards them and they all shoot it, and then we get the credits. Now that bit, apart from setting up there's an X-Files on it, doesn't actually seem to tie into this story that much directly, but it's kind of cool. I kind of liked it.
Yeah, it kind of set up the folkloristic aspect of the show. Like you said, it was the second Monster of the Week, and they've kind of gone out really naming it the Jersey Devil, which of course is the kind of cryptid that's said to inhabit the Pine Barrens in New Jersey in the US. And they've really gone for that, but they haven't interestingly gone down that route in terms of what the kind of monster turns out to be. But I think that's really interesting, like you say, in terms of Mulder and Scully's relationship, how that kind of reflects on their relationship, the monster, and the how that kind of story is resolved.
Yeah.
But they don't actually go down that route.
No,
of what the Jersey Devil's meant to be.
Yeah, the Jersey Devil's meant to be almost demonic looking, isn't it? I understand from, when I've heard stories about the Jersey Devil, it's kind of not what this was.
No.
It's kind of a bit more like Spring Hill Jack, kind of, in some descriptions and things like that. I haven't said that. I haven't read anything about the Jersey Devil in years, so I'm kind of dredging my memory now for what I've heard about the Jersey Devil. But it certainly wasn't what it turned out to be in this. I also quite like after the initial opening credits, we kind of see Mulder reading a magazine called Hanky Panky, where he says he's sort of, and I love the fact that Scully walks in on him and he's completely comfortable reading it and shows her it, and she kind of says, "Yeah, anti-gravity, was it gravity defines the word?" And I can't remember the name of the young lady he's reading about, but it's the fact it's called Hanky Panky kind of makes me laugh. And this starts a constant riffing on the fact that Mulder seems to have a massive pornography collection, and that seems to be his one outlet. Yeah, let me rephrase that. His one, say, hobby that's outside of his work. And it's kind of fun that it kind of got introduced, and it's fine. It was just funny. What we do get though is we get Scully a bit later on in the episode. We get Scully kind of doing something much more, non-FBI. She's helping at a Godson's party,
Yes,
and a friend actually mentions Scully has talked about Mulder. In fact, a friend says, "Didn't you say he was cute?" So there's kind of an inkling there. Scully has kind of considered Mulder as a sort of possibly romantically, but just dismissed the idea. And she actually says, she does say at one point, he's a jerk. No, he's not a jerk. He's just kind of obsessed with his work. And there's even a point where her friend says, "You'd make a good mother," which kind of ties into something that happens way later in the series.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, like you say, about their relationship, because the kind of expected roles of men and women and how they play off each other in this particular episode. That, Mulder's a workaholic, he's a man, and he's expected and accepted socially and culturally as such. But Scully, her female friend, like you say, mentioned that she would make a good mother because she's been through the FBI Academy and survived it.
Yeah.
But it's just a really kind of interesting little scene, like you're saying, it just touches on their relationship without really going into too much detail.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly early on, but we do get, like, will they, won't they? Certainly discussion in the media as the series went on, which kind of happened with other, moonlighting and stuff like that. But it was never really on the cards in the X-Files. It just didn't work out. They have a serious relationship way down the line, but none of that is in the films. Or it's always the platonic and sort of intellectual relationship that's important in the films and the TV show. We're probably getting,
and they're equals in that regard as well.
Indeed, they are,
and that's what I like about it. Yeah,
and they're friends somewhat. Yes. They certainly have deep respect for each other and will back each other up. Even when there's a sort of friction between them, that will not be a friction exposed to others, in terms of the characters in the stories they're in. Now, this is set in sort of on the outskirts of Atlantic City, which I think is New Jersey. And it's kind of dealing with a sort of cannibalistic humanoids in the woods, really. One thing, what I'm spotting is, while rewatching these, is almost every episode is riffing on something else in terms of a movie or a TV show. Even if it's a little riff, there seems to be elements in that in pretty much every episode. And this one, I definitely saw elements of Jaws in the law enforcement, the powers that be want to try and keep the issues under wraps in case it affects, like, vacationers and sort of people going there for leisure purposes, which is kind of a significant element in Jaws, isn't it?
Yes.
So it kind of reminded me of that. They were kind of riffing on Jaws. It also reminded me of a few other films. I don't think it was riffing on those, but it reminded me of an old British horror film from the 70s called Deathline, or also called Raw Meat, about a family unit who live in London Underground, who have turned into cannibals. It kind of reminded me of that. And there's a few other films, like Chud is a horror film that's kind of deals with this kind of thing. And more recently, after this episode we made, there was The Descent, also kind of covered, these weird underground dwellers, but they were much more monstrous than the things we kind of encounter here. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. It was certainly, I think, riffing on Jaws.
Yeah, and I think that kind of anthropological context, because, like you say, they're humanoid, is quite interesting when you talked about like the kind of politics of power. You've got high-ranking officials that are kind of trying to, like you say, with the tourist aspect, to keep this information under wraps at all costs. And that ties in really nicely, I think, to the professor's speech a bit later on to Mulder and Scully about man's nature and how, we just monopolise and take what we want.
Yes. I know a little bit. My first degree was in sort of ecology and human biology and sort of paleontology and stuff like that. So I know a bit about, things such as the sort of certain things called things like the Pleistocene extinction, where certain species are driven to extinction by the actions of man. So I kind of was particularly interested in hearing what he had to say, actually. It was kind of cool. There's some odd little moments in this episode. There's things like Mulder encounters like not a vagrant, but someone who has to live on the streets. And he says, he shows Mulder a drawing of the thing, which is like the worst drawing. It's like a kid's drawing. It's like, whoa, that's a stupid drawing. And Mulder looks at it like it's serious, kind of. And Mulder actually. It's quite nice, Mulder's so driven, he gives the guy his hotel room and takes over his bedroom, his so-called bedroom on the street, so he can sort of hang around and see what's going on. And there is like a bit that's kind of made me laugh where the police encounter Mulder and take him in as a vagrant. Like, he's got a perfect suit on, he's got an FBI badge, but he just, okay, I'll go to the drunk tank, it's fine. It just made me laugh. That it's like, why would he do that? But yeah, it serves the story, I guess. There's also a bit where he that I think foreshadowed, I can't remember the sequence of events exactly, but there's a bit where he's looking at like a sketch of the Patterson Bigfoot movie where the Bigfoot's walking and sort of looks around, that famous video clip. He's got like a line sketch of it, and it was kind of interesting that they except on the line sketch the breasts are clear, which is very odd. If you see that clip, I've saw that clip many times and never noticed the breasts before. And then at some point I was watching a sort of documentary on sort of the History Channel or something, and they said, yeah, but this Bigfoot's got breasts. So when you look at it again, you think, yeah, that Bigfoot's got breasts. It's weird. And it's like, it's one of those touches that make you think, maybe this isn't a fake, It's like, why would you put breasts on?
Yeah, that's what I've always thought, such a clever turn.
And it's kind of, I think that's a nice foreshadowing that it clicks in his head that it might be a female that they're looking for. One of the things I did like the episode, I think it had a nice solid focus and it was coherent. Like in some of the episodes we talked about, they're throwing in the kitchen sink, and the story doesn't add up at all. But at least in this one, it was coherent and it kind of, there was cause and effect was nice and clear, and they brought in the characters that made, bringing in the professor made sense. There was a few sort of niceties that didn't really, they brought in a park ranger into the city with the tranquilizer gun, and it was all, I don't think a park ranger would do that, but it was what it was. I did like there was a quip when they first encounter this stroppy sort of law enforcement guy who wants them out of town. Mulder actually says to Scully, "What's eating him?" That did make me laugh. But we do get some sort of. We also get Scully trying to sort of have a life, as it were. She goes on a date, and I was trying to work out if she was bored in that and was kind of missing being with Mulder, or whether he just kept intruding on her and so she kind of felt dragged in, and he felt like she needed to. I mean, he did call her up and say, I'm in a drunk tank, come get me, kind of thing. But there was kind of some nice comments about Scully in particular, I think, in this.
Yeah, I think so.
And also they were talking about like 8 million years out of Africa, we haven't changed that much. And there's a line at the end where Scully decides she's going to go with Mulder to this museum. Is this right at the end after all the action? Because he wanted to talk to an anthropologist, and Mulder has a little quip. He says, "Don't you have a life, Scully? you know, because she wants to go with him. And he says, keep it up, Mulder, and I'll hurt you like the Beast Woman did. Kind of thing. Because he gets quite hurt in this by her, doesn't he? But she doesn't kill him.
Yeah.
Which she could have. I think the indication is, you know, that feral life's made us really strong and agile, and she's not afraid of heights as well and things like that. But she doesn't kill him. And he thinks there's I don't know, he kind of acts like there's a glimmer of understanding or empathy between them. But it's not really fleshed out. It could be she's just looking for a potential mate again. You know,
I think so. I think that's, that scene they have and the way she looks at him, and then she realizes he's not a threat, and then obviously the way that their story is resolved, she is shot and killed, and the detective said that he did it because he did it for the same reason as one would kill a rabid animal.
Yeah.
So it really kind of reinforces that point, I think.
Yeah, and Mulder's pretty torn up about it, isn't he? He says at one point, I think she's beautiful, and it's kind of, does he mean physically? I mean, she does look quite good considering she's a feral, She appears to have some sort of eye makeup, but I wasn't quite sure on that.
If I don't put my eyebrows or anything, I'm hairier than her in a week, so...
Well, there you go. Or whether he meant the concept, the back to nature concept was kind of... beautiful. Anyway, and it does end with a slight minor twist, doesn't it? We see a child, I think a young girl, who's obviously feral. Just as a father and son are walking through the woods, and the father says, "Have I ever told you the story of the Jersey Devil?" Or something like that. It was kind of cool. Not a bad episode at all, actually. Have you got any final thoughts on it?
No, I think you've covered everything there.
Yeah. Okay, what would you give this one out of 10?
I think I give this a 7 because, like you say, there's a lot there to kind of dissect in terms of the characters and building up that kind of monster folklore and mythology, and just a lot of bits and bobs, like you say, with the anthropologist, the professor talking to the pair that I just found really interesting. So I know that it's been kind of panned generally by viewers, but I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I wouldn't give it a score that high personally. I'd consider this a middling episode, and I should sort of qualify when I score these. I kind of score them relative to other X-Files. It's not like I think this is. If I give something a 3, I don't think it's a 3 in terms of all the other TV in the world. I think it's a 3 compared to other X-Files. Pretty much the worst X-Files is still better than a lot of TV, in my opinion. But I would give this a 5. I think it's a solid story, and it's a sort of middling episode, and it's got a few good odd lines. It was pretty much universally well acted, I'd say. The law enforcement official was pretty good. The professor I thought was really good. The park ranger guy, he was pretty good. I had no complaints. It wasn't top tier though for me. It was a sort of middling one. I'd say it's a mid-range one. Okay, let's go on to the next one, which is Shadows. Now, this was written by Glenn Morgan and James Wong, directed by Michael Kattleman, and first broadcast in the US on the 22nd of October. And this one involves a young female office worker who's obviously grieving about her boss who's died. She's kind of torn up, but she gets attacked while using an ATM, and then later on we see her fine, and the people that attacked her are kind of found dead, but they've got some sort of weird residual energy within them that's keeping them warm and flexible hours after they've died. Mulder and Scully are called in because of this, weird. They're warm and they're still flexible, but they've been dead for hours. And Mulder realises this could be sort of evidence of spirit activity, or telekinesis or psychokinesis. And it appears that this young lady seems to have some sort of electrokinetic energy around her or coming from within her, and it goes on from there. What did you think of this episode, generally?
I didn't enjoy it as much. I thought it was a bit flat, but I quite enjoyed the kind of portrayal of the lead character, the woman who is kind of not causing but around all of this strange phenomena. And she apparently her kind of little story was inspired by the film The Entity from 1982.
I was inspired by that, was it? I mean, I certainly noted there was like, again, I was sort of thinking, this is the X-Files riffing on, so, well, yeah, that's inspired, I suppose. But also elements of it reminded me of the things like The Invisible Man. But I guess it was more The Entity than anything else.
I think the female kind of hysteria aspect of it is quite interesting.
I thought the actress was pretty good, actually. It was a difficult role, this, because she's in a state of high emotion for a lot of it, which can come across as like, a bit eye-rolling. But I think she coped with it very well, actually. I think she was a good actress, and it worked for me. There was also like mentions in the script of both Carrie. Carrie's directly referenced. I think Scully said, when Mulder mentions psychokinesis, I think she says something like, "What? Like when Carrie got even at the prom?"
Yeah.
And she even comes up with the line when he talks about a poltergeist. She says, "They're here." So they're having fun with this, referencing all these sort of different things directly. It's kind of fun. I think they threw in a bit too much with the terrorist sort of element of it. I think that wasn't. I mean, yeah, all right. The boss in charge, who was left in charge, was a bit dodgy, but I think that made it feel like they were trying to bring the real world events in a bit much. And didn't really need to be small. There.
Yeah, it could have been a lot more kind of local, couldn't it? And not as kind of huge. Just something that he was in, dodgy dealings financially, something like that.
Yeah. One thing I've found interesting is there was two lots of characters who were like very incidental, but it was pairs of characters, and they're always a man and a woman. Right at the beginning, we get like, I don't know if they're vagrants or young people just looking for something to do, but it's like a boy and a girl, or a man and a woman, is saying, "Oh, I found somewhere to crash," and they pull down a sort of one of those ladders, along the side of fire escapes, and we see a body, and then they both run off. And then later on, when Lauren, the female, is the central character in this, is attacked, well, there's an intention to murder her. It's by a couple rather than when I say a couple, a male and a female pair of obvious career criminals rather than two males. It was kind of interesting they put that in. I don't know if it was significant or not. I guess it stopped it being potentially interpreted as a sort of sexual violence, maybe. I wasn't quite sure. It just felt a bit odd to me. It just, career criminals tend to be men, frankly. Violent career criminals tend to be men. It was just an odd little touch.
Yeah, but like you say, a really interesting one.
Like I say, if I were making a movie, a TV show, and I wanted to show a woman under threat but exclude the sort of possible sexual violence angle, a sort of a man and a woman as the attackers, or two women as the attackers, kind of certainly reduce that quite a bit. So that might be why they did it. I don't know. There were some nice touches in the episode. Like you said, it kind of fell flat in a lot of places. I like the fact Scully came up with the theory that the man who apparently had died, who she was grieving for, was still alive, and Mulder just went along with it, didn't he? He was kind of, I think he kind of suspected something else, but wanted Scully to exhaust a line of reasoning, or maybe he just wanted to see for himself. Didn't he make a line about Elvis? He made a line about Elvis in here, didn't he?
He did an impression, which is quite funny.
Yeah, he said it's not easy to fake your own death. It's only one person's done it, Elvis, or something like that. So they find some, basically his left organs. So they managed to get a hold of one of those to sample, and they find out he's dead. And they have kind of a funny interview with a very grumpy, not mortician, but like a doctor lady that's kind of funny. And it starts, he's dead, all right. It's kind of like that. And Mulder's kind of amused by this. He kind of, Mulder likes people, doesn't he? Even though he's kind of a loner, he kind of gets on with people that aren't dicks to him, basically.
Yeah.
But then we have that weird thing with the car, where the car locks itself and goes into a mad reverse, and the lights stay on for hours afterwards, which again brings Mulder back to, that happens with sort of psychokinetic phenomena and stuff like that. There's some cool stuff. One thing I did like, there was one scene where the woman gets a kind of a vision, and there's a bath filling with blood, and then she hears the voice of a boss sort of saying no, or something like that. But basically, it's clear that he was murdered rather than a suicide. He was a suicide, and then she works out who's behind it and stuff like that, which was kind of cool. And there's some really good special effects.
I thought so in this one, yeah.
Yeah, especially that end scene in the office where the papers are flying about and the knife's flying around and this, that, and the other. And she actually says, "Don't kill him. Just show us where the stuff is. Show us the evidence and stuff like that." And basically, this guy's been making money selling stuff to terrorists, isn't it? And the other guy who she's grieving for, who basically he's a father figure to her, and it was that kind of relationship, wasn't it? From what's described, again, purely platonic relationship. Bits of this really worked well, but it didn't quite hang together, and bits of it fell flat. One bit that made me laugh was the gravedigger. Did you catch that? He basically had an entire backstory. They were at the graveyard, and there was a gravedigger, and they said, "Do you know this guy?" And he says, "Oh yeah, he was this and this, and his wife's over there, and his daughter died then." And it's like, this guy knew everything. Oh wow! He knows a lot. He's really into his business. This guy, he knows everything. It was a laughably bad sort of exposition dump, really. Wow. And then we come to a bit of banter, which is a callback to the episode before, where they're talking about having a life, where they basically go off, but Mulder's going on about going to see the Liberty Bell and and stuff like that. They drive off, and then it ends with Lauren in a new office, and she's like done something wrong. She's been late with a report or something, and then we see her cup start to vibrate, and you can see her like thinking, "Ah, shit," kind of thing. But it's a truck going past, so yeah, there you go. So bits of it I think were quite good, but it just didn't quite, it didn't gel. It almost felt like, Glenn Morgan and James Wong had written the really good squeeze just before this, and maybe this was just that they'd poured all their great creative energy into that, and this one was like a bit not quite as good, frankly. Okay, what would you rate this one?
I'd be at a 5 for this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of 4, 5. I'm sort of about the same as you. It was fun to watch. As I keep saying, even the bad ones are kind of fun to watch. There's always something fun, and if nothing else, we usually get something decent going on with Scully or Mulder in some way. Which brings us to the next one. Episode 7, Ghost in the Machine. I like the title, that's for sure. So this was written by Alex Ganser and Howard Gordon and directed by Gerald Freeman, and aired on the 29th of October 1993. Now, this is essentially evil computer protecting itself kind of story, isn't it? Do you want to pick this one up a bit? I feel like I've talked a lot.
Well, this one, I can appreciate that at the time this would have been kind of, I wouldn't say new as such, but it's kind of been done to death since, so it's quite hard watching this, and it's having to kind of cast your mind back in a kind of retrospective way. But I don't know, not much happens again, I think, with with Mulder and Scully, so you kind of just relying on the plot, and it's not, again, it feels quite flat to me. Nothing is kind of happening that much throughout.
I mean, I think it's regarded as quite a poor episode with Chris Carter. I think, I can't remember the names, but some of the other writers have said, no, we're never doing an AI story again. They're just flat, it's not easy to make a building scary. But apparently there's other times Chris Carter said, no, we could have made a better episode out of this, and we did okay considering, but other times he's like, nah, that was a bad one. To me, they're riffing on How from 2001. Really, and I think they acknowledge that. But there's other ones where there's like killer computers. There's an old 70s film, I think, called something like The Forbin Project, of the same kind of concept of like a computer being super intelligent and sort of taking over defence. And that one, the computer takes over the world. It's kind of like this story, but writ large. But so it's kind of been done. I mean, there was some cool stuff like Tension, where we see like cameras self-focusing, and anytime you see people through a camera lens, it always adds to an air of tension as well. And there was a few of that, and I thought that kind of, those bits of it worked okay. But what was really a bit eye-rolling was when the computer said things like file deleted. And it's like, oh man. And I did laugh at some of the phrases used. He said at one point the phrase "electro wizard" is used by the main program. It's like, whoa. And there was some really
techno-anarchist.
Techno-anarchist. I think that I've heard actually, but Data Traveller was another one. It's like, but Electro Wizard, man, I want to be in a band called the Electro Wizards. Electro Wizard, wow. And I also laughed at the right at the beginning. There's the head program. What is it? Will check or something like that. He's typing, and it's like the worst fake typing you've ever seen. He's like flapping his hands on the keyboard. But actually, he was pretty good in the role. Actually, I thought he was
the
quite
kind of
good.
tension between him and the CEO of the company, I thought was quite nice. About, it was downsizing, wasn't he? So
and anyone who's worked in business knows that kind of dick you have to deal with. So it's kind of a familiar thing. And there was a lot of people like that around in the 80s and 90s too. So it's like, that's that archetype is really familiar to everyone.
Yes. And I think Sorry, no,
go ahead.
I said that the most kind of fascinating part of this episode was Mulder's former partner for me.
Yeah, it was weird. It wasn't a great actor, and the guy didn't seem to have any likeable qualities whatsoever. To me, what about to you?
No, I mean, it was just interesting the way he played off Mulder. It didn't really tell us anything more about Mulder because we kind of know, he's. I think, does he mention in this episode that he wanted to be in the basement, whereas his friend wanted to be on the 5th floor?
I can't remember that. I do remember the guy. I do know the guy seems to feel like, I'm not quite jealous, but he feels aggrieved. Well, he feels like Mulder should help him. I just can't see these two working together at all. That's the problem I had with it.
There doesn't to be any allegiance between them because he mentions about being in Mulder's shadow, which you can appreciate because we already know at this point that he was a genius. And
yes.
His previous.
I did take that from this episode. Quite right. It was another pointer that he was like an ace student or an ace, enrollee.
But it wasn't anything new, if that makes sense. We've had quite nice character touches and developments in each of the episodes, like you said, particularly with Scully in The Jersey Devil. And this one it was like you say, it's just kind of reaffirmed there was nothing new. No.
I did take one thing I did like was the fact that when that fella basically ripped off Mulder's profile and acted like it was his own and got complimented on it, and Mulder said, "What the hell are you doing?" He wasn't that cross, but Scully was really angry on his behalf. It's
true,
like she's protective of Mulder, and it's almost like Mulder's a bit more not hardened, but sort of beat up by the world. So it's kind of he just accepts it, and it might be more a case of he's so confident in himself. Even if someone does that to him, it's like okay, that's life. I know that I did it, so that's fine. But it comes across as more weary. But Scully's kind of in his corner and quite angry about it.
I think it plays off quite nicely, though. Thinking about it, like maybe Mulder did it as a sense of, like I said, allegiance. He felt he owed him something as his former partner or whatever. But the fact that Scully is actually literally there fighting his corner, and they are a much better pairing, and they, I think it reinforces their kind of team aspect. Maybe that their relationship, like you say. So I don't know. It's quite interesting to set that off against Ice.
No, it's funny. Yeah,
and what happens in the next episode and how they're kind of antagonists at one point.
Yeah, and also actually going back to an earlier episode in Squeeze where we encounter one of Scully's ex-colleagues, Colton. He was a bit of a scumbag too, but I bought the fact that Scully was a colleague. They'd worked together and stuff like that. That worked for me. But this guy in this just did not feel like it was. I'm not saying they presented it poorly. It was odd. It just felt odd. Felt odd. There's also one section in which I kind of found interesting, which is where Scully has to go up into the vent because they can't move through the building. And I found it interesting that Scully went up into the vent and not Mulder. Now, that could be Scully's lighter than Mulder, so it's easy for Mulder to get her up there. That's probably it. But it was interesting that she was took the more active role there. And I sometimes I thought it was a bit goofy because we were getting like Dutch angles and weird shots to try and add to the tension. But actually, there's some really nice shots in and I did, even though it was silly, she was getting sucked towards a fan, which a fan has to be massively powerful to suck you towards it. I felt it was exciting and tense. Actually, I liked it. It reminded me of Die Hard in places.
Yeah, it did actually. That was quite, and maybe it's just taking on your point from the previous episode, how you had that kind of male and female pairing. Maybe they're just trying to give the women in the series a bit more of an active role because this is generally a male orientated job, especially back then. Like we said that Scully was the character was very much influenced by Clarice Starling from of Silence of the Lambs, and I know that there was a surge in applications from women to the FBI after the Silence of the Lambs came out. So maybe that's what they're trying to do a bit. I mean, it looks a bit strange, like you say, when if you're looking at career criminals, hitmen, whatever. Generally that would be a kind of male. Portrayal, but
I do like. Well, the fact is she was in the vent, she was doing stuff. One of the things I really always liked about Scully is you never feel she's like a damsel in distress. She's never passive. Even if we go back to Squeeze, where she's obviously in deep trouble, she's not, well, someone has to come save me. There's not that vibe at all in the show. And when she's going through these darts, she's like, it's kind of exciting at the end. She pulls out a gun and she's trying to shoot the fan to stop it. And it's kind of exciting. And like Mulder's nowhere to be seen. And we don't expect Mulder to save her either. I'd never felt, Mulder. Maybe I've seen this episode several times, so I know what's going to happen. But I never felt that, Mulder will turn up and save her in a minute. And that's how the episode, it never really plays out like that. I mean, sometimes they do, but they save each other, don't they? It's not like, Scully's there to be rescued. Let's put it that way. She's not Lois Lane. She's, she's an equal.
That equal foot in it, I think, is really, it's very subtle. Like you say, you don't always pick up on it, but when you really think about it, that's such a, and for the 90s, was that kind of touched on before in similar programs? I mean, this seems to have kind of come in really, because it's very subtle, but it's obviously there.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure watching these programs relatively close together because you do see the development more clearly.
Yeah,
I think you'd have to watch quite a lot of episodes if you were only watching one a week to sort of pick up on it as quickly. Anyway, it's kind of cool. There's I'm trying to think of what else happened. We get Deep Throat. And I don't think he needed to be in this one, but I liked him in it. You know, I do like Deep Throat.
Yeah.
And I think his presence kind of added to it. There's definitely a really killer line that he delivers, which is basically at the end, you know, the program has been taken off by government people. The programmer has been taken off by government people, and he says, Mulder says, they can't just take him like that. You know, they can't do that. And Deep Throat says, they can do anything they want. Which is a really sinister line. So I remember seeing Deep Throat in this. It felt like he was kind of parachuted in because it was interesting. But no, I'm glad he was there. Well, he may have been, but I'm glad he was there. You know, it worked for me. I do like whenever Deep Throat turns up. I really like it. I didn't take so much to the guy that ultimately replaced him, which I can't remember if he had a code name even. There was a black guy. Once Deep Throat was gone, there was a black guy doing a similar sort of role. Always seemed really angry about everything. Yeah. But Deep Throat was way better in this kind of positioning. I also like the fact Deep Throat being there means that he's not necessarily all about alien conspiracy. He's more interested in government conspiracy, you know, more generally, and that's why it's sort of helping Mulder on this one. You know, talking about an AI would have usual military usages and all this, that, and the other. I also thought there was possible, you know, the end part where basically they're trying to stop the program being a government guy who's some sort of mole or plant is trying to stop the program being erased. I think there was an interesting story there that might have been better than actually there's a killer AI out here. You know, maybe develop it, you know, better developing this story of the government are trying to sort of inveigle their way in to get this as a military application might have been a better story. Maybe not. I don't know. The thing is, it's all about buildings and, you know, who knows? It's difficult.
No, I agree with you there. And just touching on your point about Deep Throat, that it is, you know, not just the alien aspect, but the whole kind of government conspiracy. And even though this isn't one of my favourite episodes, I like that it kind of, you know, touches on that, you know, broader level of how involved and, you know, the conspiracy, the paranoia, really starting to set those things in motion for the tone of the show.
Yeah. To me, the whole episode feels almost like the writers haven't quite understood what Mulder and Scully are all about. I say that. Some of their lines are pretty typical. It feels like they haven't quite got the vibe of the show. Let's put it that way. That's kind of how it feels. There was one other interesting thing that occurred to me after this episode, which was, why is Mulder... You know, Mulder isn't acting typical here when he tries to shut this computer thing down. He's all about... If we go back to the Jersey Devil, say, he's all about, you know, we know this person's a cannibal, but she needs to be saved. Whereas in this, an AI has become sentient and he wants to kill it, in effect. It just seems a bit not like Mulder to do that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Or no. It's possible he sees there's a bigger... You know, this could be completely disastrous, but it doesn't feel... Scully should be the one that shuts it down. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
even just, you know, a little bit more hesitation, really.
Yeah, he's like, let's just kill it. Yeah, in effect, so you know.
I agree with that.
And it seemed a bit odd. So again, it doesn't quite... It feels like the writers haven't quite got the X-Files vibe right. That's kind of how it feels. Anyway, I haven't really got much more to say. I think we've really actually gone into this one way more than we needed to be honest. What would you give this one out of 10?
Probably 3.5.
Oh, you're a bit generous, I think. I give this and again, I'll restate. I'm doing this in terms of X-Files episodes, not really everything else. I'll give it a 2 out of 10. It's got a couple I mean, Deep Throat was probably the most interesting. I also kind of like the end, the Terminator style ending, you know, where it becomes, you know, alive again. At the very end we see it light up. That was kind of fun. Again, the X-Files riffing on shows left, right and centre there. Or it feels like that, you know. It could be they weren't doing that at all, but it kind of felt like it. Okay, let's move on. Ice. Okay, so episode 8 is Ice, written by Glenn Morgan, James Wong, directed by David Nutter, who is kind of famous for being the go-to guy for pilots. He really understands TV shows, essentially. He's still in work today, and considering this is over 20 years ago, and he made this episode, the guy is very, very talented.
Yeah.
So essentially, an Alaskan drilling site has collected ice that's 250,000 years old, but it suffers a sort of spate of madness, mayhem, murder, suicide, whatever. And Mulder and Scully are assigned to go with a team of scientists to figure out what's going on. They discover a weird parasite that's come up with the ice that's kind of precipitating these murderous activities. But then one member of their team is murdered, and they all begin to suspect each other. Can you tell me, did this remind you of any other films?
Strangely enough, The Thing, maybe.
Yeah, Chris Carter kind of denied this for quite a while, but I think it's come clean recently. It's essentially The Thing. It's the X-Files riff on 1982's, in particular, The Thing, the John Carpenter thing. Do you feel this kind of remake's justified in the X-Files?
Yeah, definitely. And it was fun, for any kind of horror fan. I mean, it opens with a shot of the dog, so straight away.
It's the thing. It's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. It was it was really in a fun kind of nod to it. And, this is one of my favourite episodes. So, yeah, I love it.
It's a great... I mean, when you're going to do a remake, if you do it this good, who cares? You know, good. Essentially. In fact, it riffed on The Thing many times. It riffed on a few other films as well, but The Thing was the main one. The dog, and not just the dog, but we're getting a dog level view, which is exactly out The Thing, isn't it? And it's kind of, but you get an instant shock because it walks past like a corpse or a bloody body, which is kind of a shocker. And then basically we get a Mexican standoff just before the credits where the guys are pointing guns at each other, and that kind of standoff is reminiscent at the end of John Carpenter's The Thing. Also,
it's kind of like it was picking up where that left off. That's how I kind of read it, which I thought was nice.
Yeah, I think that's a good reading. And it's kind of even cooler is they take guns off of each other and sort of shoot themselves instead of shooting each other, which would work at the end of John Carpenter's The Thing. That would have worked, if that had happened. I prefer the more ambiguous ending, but it would have worked. There's even a character in it wasn't a main one. I'm trying to figure out who he was. There was even a character called Campbell in this, and now The Thing. Both the movies are based on an original story called Who Goes There, and that was written by Joseph W. Campbell. So, the name Campbell even appears. But I think that the X-Files always claimed they were influenced by the original story Who Goes There as their way of not referencing the thing. I also think, I could be wrong, but I think one of the set decorators from the movie The Thing worked on this episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. I thought it was a great ending. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. I thought it was a great ending to the pre-credit sequence, them turning the guns on themselves. And isn't there also a statement, we are not who we are, I think is said. Yeah, I mean, it was The Thing. It was The Thing, for sure. I mean, we didn't get like the giant mutant alien, but in all other respects, it was like an alien life form taking over humans. Though, I mean, the alien aspect of it is kind of introduced by saying, "Oh, they've drilled into a meteor," but it didn't have to. It didn't have to be alien at all. It could have been a sort of ancient life form. A terrestrial life form, but they put that in. There was a few other aspects I picked up on that I thought were riffing on other films. They find a sheet, a paper with the phrase "We are not who we are" written over and over. Did that remind you of anything?
Shining.
Yeah, exactly. It's The Shining, isn't it? And also the worm in the ear business was Ratha Khan. To me, it's kind of gross. And fun. It was a really fun episode, really tense episode, really exciting episode.
And also the invasion of the body snatchers, I got that vibe as well.
Yeah.
Just in terms of how their kind of personalities change. And
Yeah, I did like the fact that they did set up some of... I mean, the paranoia stuff kind of gets set up before they get there, where Xander Berkeley's character asks for their ID, and it's kind of a bit played up as a joke, saying, you're who you are, you're who you are. And I also like the fact that when they were showing IDs, Mulder actually checked Scully's ID. That made me laugh. But that also leads to Bear, the pilot, being really stroppy when they ask him for sort of identification, which means he's stroppy before they get there. So when he acts violent there, he's not acting out of character, is he? As far as they're concerned. So that leads to that sort of doubt and paranoia and stuff like that. I really like that. I thought that was a really good setup. It was also helped by the gross special effects of the alien under the skin.
yeah, which I thought really held up.
Yeah, it really does hold up. The only thing that doesn't hold up, and it kind of does, is the CGI worms.
Yeah,
and
I was thinking exactly the same thing.
They kind of look CGI, but they kind of look cool as well.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. They kind of... I think if they were still pictures, they look fine. It's the fact that you can tell from the movement they're CGI because they're not, their physics isn't quite right and stuff like that. Or they're just, the worms are almost, I don't know, drawn. I can't, it's not drawn, but they look like different from the environment they're in. Let's put it that way. They look distinct. And that's some great actors in it. I mean, this is probably the best cast episode we've seen so far in terms of acting abilities. Yeah. I didn't think there was a weak performance in it at all, actually. I thought it was all solid. I also like the fact this episode was one of those ones where Mulder and Scully don't just pick the case because it's got an X-File vibe. They've been assigned this one, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Anyway, there's kind of... things happen. We find out Bear's been infected. The dog's bitten Bear, hasn't it, and drawn blood. And somehow the worm's got into... I mean, some of it, if you really scrutinise this, some of the things doesn't quite add up in terms of, how did he get the worm and all that. But it's an infection, so it's fine, I guess. And basically the tension keeps growing from that point, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because it's single location as well, I think that really helps because they're literally trapped there.
Yeah, they're trapped in a storm, aren't they? And they just can't give out. I mean, I have to mention we've got Xander Berkeley here, who has been a slime ball in lots of things and does it really well. In fact, he's not a slime ball in this, I don't think. He's pretty nuanced and sort of rounded character, but he's famously a massive slime ball in 24. Though he does come good at the end in that. But he's also been recently in The Walking Dead. And he was like a complete maggot in that too. He was only in a couple of them, but he was, that's Xander Berkeley. Yeah. I've kind of grown to like Xander Berkeley in stuff, actually. And I like him in it. And also we have Felicity Huffman in this as a toxicologist. She's known for Desperate Housewives, I think. But I think she's won an Oscar. She's a pretty good actress anyway, whatever. And she really gives it her all in the last scenes of this. So, great acting. The core of why this episode's great, though, for me, is what happens between Mulder and Scully.
Yes.
Do you want to sort of talk about how things develop between them?
Yeah, so we've had, obviously, Bear's been attacked, and they notice that he has a worm, and you have that horrendous scene where they have to kind of pull the worm out, which I thought was great in terms of the gore, and it, every time I watch it, it just goes through me, and they have to pull it out from the back of his neck. And the kind of symptom of being infected is, like you say, that people are very kind of angry and aggressive, and we kind of get that a bit of an altercation between Mulder and Scully, and the other two pick up on it at this point.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, setting in terms of, like you say, the paranoia and everything. And they all kind of go to bed, which is quite interesting how Scully locks herself into the room. I thought that was quite an interesting, starting to really show how this is affecting all of them, because they're staying in separate rooms for everybody that was there before. And Mulder goes out into the kind of main area, and opening the freezer, Murphy falls out.
Yeah.
And he's been killed. And that's at the point where everybody else kind of walks in and discovers him there, and obviously it's that he's killed Murphy. And he ends up pulling his gun on the rest of the group, because Bear's dead, isn't he? He was killed.
Bear dies when they pull the worm out.
They pull the worm out, yeah.
So they can't just remove the worm. That's the thing.
No, and so
it sets up
there's
another interesting element. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another kind of altercation where Mulder and Scully because they're the only two with guns, aren't they?
Yeah.
Weapons, and they're literally pointing their weapons at each other.
Yeah, I thought that was a great scene.
It really was, and it escalated really quickly, but it didn't feel, it felt very believable still.
Yeah.
And I think it's at that point, isn't it, that Mulder says, this is me.
Yeah.
But
Mulder lowers the gun first, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Which, to me, basically what's going on is like a testing of the levels of trust of each other. And I found it interesting that Mulder lowered the gun first, actually. Because Mulder's pretty, he's a pretty isolated character. And it seems to me Scully's pretty much the only person he trusts. And I think this is a sign of that. He lowers his gun. I know there's other things going on in this scene, but I kind of took it as like, I trust you, Scully, to make the right decision.
Yeah, and he says that later on as well, because they do end up putting him in kind of holding room, and he says to Scully, "I'm actually safer in here than you are out there," which I thought was quite
dark.
It really was quite chilling. And obviously they're all, getting. You don't know at this point who is infected, and tensions are rising between the other two scientists that are left. And blood is infected blood is mistakenly what's the word?
Mixed with. Infected with infected.
Yes, so she puts them together.
Because they're all really knackered, aren't they? Because they're all can't sleep and paranoid. And then Xander Berkeley starts shouting out and she gets cross. But from this, they realise that introducing a worm to another worm destroys both. And that's a way of curing someone who's got it. And, of course, they think Mulder's got it. So, there's that going on. Really nice idea. Really excellent idea. Because basically you're saying, if you don't think you got the worm and someone's going to try and put it in your ear, you're going to go mental, aren't you?
Yeah.
So, which means you look like you got the symptoms. It's like, wow, what a great dynamic this is. But, I mean, it turns out, well, in the end, lucky, doesn't it, in the end? I mean, the other two kind of think Scully's been talked. I mean, they even say he's going to talk her, he's going to talk her around. What are we going to do? She's going to be on his side. And that's exactly what happens when they come out of the room. But we get a really nice scene where they have to check each other, which is a callback to the pilot.
Yes.
Where Scully asks Mulder to check her for some marks. But they check each other, and there's even a dark bit in that where it looked like he's possibly going to strangle her or something. He sort of grabs her neck, was it? Yeah. But he says, "I'll check you now." It's kind of that. They're looking for that bubonic plague sign, aren't they? But, even in that, Mulder says, "Remember the symptoms disappeared." So it's like, you can't, that's not even a valid check. Again, we're riffing on the thing here, that whole blood testing thing in the thing. It's riffing on that a bit. This could have been a full film, this one. It was really good. Really well put together. I also feel that there's a really good scene where he thinks Scully doesn't believe him, and he seems kind of genuinely upset that Scully doesn't believe him. And I think that's also a sign that Scully's the only one he trusts, so he finds it really hard that she doesn't kind of believe him.
Yes.
But, he could have the worm. To be honest, he could have had the worm. He wouldn't have known. It's tricky, this one.
But they've already tested the theory out, haven't they, with the infected dog, so they've only got one worm left.
Yes.
And that was another great part. Like, not only that idea, like you say, that, two worms will kill each other, but the fact that they only have one left to try this with. Yeah,
because the ice cores melted, so they got nothing else. And then it ends with the military or someone bombing the base flat. So, because Mulder's keen to go back now, isn't he? Which we're getting a hint there of Mulder's kind of gets obsessed about things, and he kind of starts to disregard consequences. But Scully says at the end, leave it there, He says, it's still there, Scully. It's still there in the ice. Scully just says, leave it there, It's too dangerous. And he kind of relents, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, a sign that he trusts Scully. This is one that really strengthened the relationship between Mulder and Scully. Really a pivotal one.
Yeah.
And I can see why it's one of your favourites. It's obviously a great episode. It's not often you get a first season of any show where the episodes are this good. We've been lucky. I mean, we've had Squeeze and we've had this, and the pilot was pretty good too. So really hitting it out of the park here, they were.
Yes.
Got anything else to say about this one?
Not really. Just say it's been interesting with these kind of next four, how they've gone from kind of folklore to AI to psychokinesis to what would you call this one? Kind of like sci-fi or biological.
Sci-fi, yeah, sci-fi.
Yeah,
and paranoia, really.
And paranoia, yeah, completely. How they've kind of just had that huge arc in 4 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, this one almost goes back to 50s paranoia, like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of paranoia, or even Quatermass, the Quatermass 2.
Yeah, it did remind me, yeah.
It's got a lot of sort of vibes with that, in fact. I think I have to say, of the 4, this is easily the best. The first 3 we've talked about were fairly either middling or weak episodes, but this one really does, for me, hits it out of the parks. And you obviously think it's great too. Let's give it a score. What would you give this out of 10?
I think it'd be at an 8.5.
Oh, I'll give it a clean 9, and I think I might even be underrating it then. I want to think about it a bit more, but for now, I'm going to give it a 9. It's hard to see any flaws in it. That's the thing. There's a few shortcuts here and there, but it's just a really, really solid episode. Well acted, really well written. There's very little wrong with it. It's just a really good one. It's a really good one. Okay, I think we're about done now. So next time, in 3 or 4 weeks, we'll be covering episodes 9, 10, 11 and 12. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head. I think Beyond
Space, Fallen Angel, Eve and Fire.
It's been a long time since I've seen these, but I think Fallen Angel is a particularly good one, but I can't remember for sure. I know Space is one of those ones that's panned, but I quite like, I think, if it's the one I'm thinking of, but we'll see. Anyway, let's say our goodbyes. Thank you for coming on again, Becky. It's been a real pleasure to have you on. And I am really enjoying this journey. Are you finding it good fun?
Yeah, thanks for having me. No, really enjoying it.
Yeah, so we'll be back in 3 or 4 weeks. So goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And remember, they're watching.